faithfulness.
Good morning, Facebook. Do you want to be in it?
Not really.
Why don't you move to that chair? Oh, neither of you want to be in it? We'll do a nice twist to Glenn and Rod. There we go.
I can still stay there.
Yeah, you're safe.
Let me be on the other side. There she is.
Good morning, Barb.
Good morning.
Barb.
You need to come sit over here so you can be on TV.
So,
Here, I got some for you.
Oh, those are mine. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't want to take somebody else's.
well, welcome everyone. Pastor Chris won't be joining us today, so let us begin with the prayer of the day. Almighty and merciful God, we implore you to hear the prayers of your people. Be our strong defense against all harm and danger, that we may live and grow in faith and hope, through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. Anyone up for lamenting?
Sounds like a pretty good one. So this is Lamentations 3:22 through 33. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will go in hope. I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that no one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for one to bear the yoke in youth, to sit alone in silence when the Lord has imposed it. To put one's mouth in the dust, there may yet be hope. To give one's cheek to the smiter, to be filled with insults. For the Lord will not reject forever. Although he causes grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love, for he does not willingly afflict or grieve anyone. Interesting.
This goes with the comments so many people make when they have problems, where they see problems and people that they love. Why would God allow this to happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that we can't see God at work in grief or affliction. That somehow that is a sign that God is absent from our lives. If we're experiencing any of that, and so I think that's the focus of the whole book of Lamentations really is this sense that God is present in this, and in our lamenting, that we can truly lament and know that God is hearing it and sees, and sees our grief, sees our affliction, sees, what's going on with us.
And it seems to me that in the past, the church, and maybe even some still do, has used that to You know, well, this happened to you because you don't have enough faith. This happened to your children or your family, or because you didn't do this, and you know you need to contribute more money, or you need to, you know, do this or that. And
That's
I
how
mean,
Job's friends.
yeah, all the Job's buddies, and but he put it well, and so, and that's God. God loves us, and He doesn't want any harm to come to us, but He allows it to happen because we live in a sinful world. And some days I think I'd like to give up all my free will just to have God there protect me. And other days I think, no, you just got to trust that He'll be there to take care of you.
I've been listening to this great course. I buy great courses all the time. I'm listening to one on the Old Testament, and they didn't have a section on Lamentations, but he did have a couple of things on Psalms. And talking about the lamenting Psalms, he said the pattern of them, there is always a phrase in there about trusting in God. And the same thing here. This is a statement of trust. So they never lament without saying that they trust in God. There's always that feeling. Another thing he pointed out was that this was unique among religions of the time, the pagan religions. Nobody would ever think to complain to one of the gods and think that they would listen to them.
Yeah.
You know, they sacrificed so they would get the favor, but the idea that God would care enough to hear these complaints, that was unique to the Hebrews and their faith.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought that was just kind of interesting that there's never a complaint in the Bible without them saying they trust in God there. All kinds of explanations for why it's happened. You know, they have all kinds of explanations why God would allow this, but the final word is they trust in God.
And I'm not sure. Having worked with alcoholics and addicts for much of my career, I mean, one of the sticking points of is for them is why is this happening to me? And and I would simply point out to them, as long as you stay stuck in the why, the chances of you getting sober are very slim, and the chances of you're setting yourself up, if you are not drinking, the chances of setting yourself up for a relapse is very high if you are focused on the why. And I think that's the beauty of this is as you say, other religions would make sacrifices, and the Jews even fell into that pattern of we got to make sacrifices to appease God. They did not listen. They didn't listen well to the prophets and the psalmist in terms of saying, no, we need to trust that God is with us even in the midst of hardship, even in the midst of suffering and whatever is going on in our lives. That God is with us, but they still continue to get into that pattern of sacrificial, the sacrificial worship of God, and that somehow you had to appease God with your sacrifice. You had to, and you had to make the right sacrifice in order to make the gods happy, and to make God happy. And that isn't the word here. That isn't what the book of Lamentations is about. It's about knowing that that God's love is always there for us, and we can trust it. Yeah.
I like verse 26. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Because sometimes that's all you can do, you know. We've done a lot of waiting this year, a lot of hoping and a lot of grief and sorrow. But that it's good. It's good to pause and wait for God, you know, to know that He's still working even when you feel like you can't.
I think, you know, that's where in verse 28 also about sitting alone in silence. You know, I found that to be such a vital part of prayer life for me, is just sitting alone and quieting, using different techniques to just quiet myself to where I don't have a million thoughts running through my through my mind, and instead of am able to focus and slow my breathing, listen to my own heart beat, and trust that you know, that God's heart is beating for all those people that I am concerned for, and that's it's one of the things where I've, you know, using modern technology and a modern understanding of the whole body, that, you know, when your heart, every beat of your heart, there's blood, there's oxygen and nutrition going to every cell of your body, you know. And just listening to your heart beat and realize that God is nourishing every cell of your body, and then is also carrying away the waste and getting rid of that which would damage our health. And that's one of my prime meditations, is just to think about how that, and how wonderfully made we are, how we are so well knit. We're so well knit together. I mean, we can't even, you know, as marvelous as new technology is, we can't even come close to.
Well, and that's why when you do, you're able to relax, hear your own heartbeat. You know, this doesn't say that you shouldn't be praying at the same time, or thanking God. It says get rid of those outside influences, stop wailing and crying, you know, and relax, appreciate, like you said, the magnificence of the human body and what God has done to create us. And if you can get rid of those outside distractions, you can, you know, have a closer relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in this day and age, in this world, it's so hard to, you know, quiet yourself. You have to basically go into a closet or something to get rid of those outside distractions. And that's why the best time to pray is early in the morning before everybody else gets up and the world starts, or, you know. But yeah, it's something that we need to do to quiet our life around us, and just have that relationship with God and nothing else to disturb you. Then you can really appreciate, you know, the world that He created, and the senses He's given us.
I think that would be a very useful thing to do. I find that my life is so incredibly busy. So where I get that is I go out on my bike.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Mine can just go relax and do that. Or even mowing grass. It's noisy enough you don't hear anything else. You're mowing. You can be praying or doing whatever you want to because nobody else is going to talk to you then.
But, you know, and you also have music and
yeah, the music, and that focuses my brain 100. I mean, it takes 100% of my brain to do
right.
that.
Yeah, and it's focusing a whole different part of your, you know, I mean, I have my one grandson has gotten into rock climbing, and I mean, it's amazing how strong his body has become. One,
I imagine.
I mean, he is, you know, he is really chiseled out, but it's also, you know, when he's climbing, he has to be totally focused.
Yeah.
Totally focused on climbing and where next to put his foot, where next to put his hands, what, you know, and what he can be doing, and it's very much a right brain type thing, you know.
Spatially, sure.
It's all spatial and focusing where, you know, it's our left brain that's trying to solve problems and all this, you know, and so that's what. And I know my daughter, who's you know, is an anthropologist, and she said that's one thing she misses about college is she was both an art. She had a double major in art and anthropology, and the thing she loved was being able to go into the art studio and just shut off the left side of her brain, and you know, that's that creative side, you know, of how that happens, and you know, she's in the process of building her, because her form of art is paper making, and she's into building her studio so that she can do that again. Yeah, she was the one who spoke here for.
Yeah, she was good.
Yeah.
We should move on to Psalm 30.
Sounds good.
Well, I'll read it. I will exalt you, O Lord, because you have lifted me up and have not let my enemies triumph over me. O Lord my God, I cried out to you, and you restored me to health. You brought me up, O Lord, from the dead. You restored my life as I was going down to the grave. Sing praise to the Lord, all you faithful. Give thanks in holy remembrance. God's wrath is short. God's favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping spends the night, but joy comes in the morning. While I felt secure, I said, I shall never be disturbed. You, Lord, with your favor made me as strong as the mountains. Then you hid your face, and I was filled with fear. I cried to you, O Lord. I pleaded with my Lord, saying, what profit is there in my blood if I go down to the pit? Will the dust praise you or declare your faithfulness? Hear, O Lord, and have mercy upon me. O Lord, be my helper. You have turned my wailing into dancing. You have put off my sackcloth and clothed me with joy. Therefore my heart sings to you without ceasing. O Lord my God, I will give you thanks forever.
I learned a cool story about this, weeping spends the night, but joy comes in the morning, and we hear that a lot. My mom's middle name is Joy, and it was originally supposed to be Joan, which was one of my grandma's good friends. They were going to give her the middle name Joan, but my grandma labored all night, and she was finally born in the morning. And she was alone. My grandparents were missionaries in Papua New Guinea, and so my grandpa wasn't there when any of the kids were born because she had to go on a ship to Australia to have the babies, and then he would come once the baby was born and take her home. My mom's middle name is Joy because she had labored all night long and finally gave birth in the morning. So joy came in the morning.
That's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Well, this is in my Bible, it has this. This is the context of Psalm 30. It says that that David had taken a census of all men capable of fighting, indicating a reliance on human power over God's strength. As a consequence for this rebellion, a plague came upon Israel, and 70,000 men died. In repentance, David bought land, built an altar, and offered a sacrifice to the Lord. This psalm was likely written to dedicate this land, the place where God's temple would later be built.
Mine has an abbreviated version of that where it's titled Thanksgiving for Recovery from Grave Illness, and then like the subtitle is a psalm, a song at the dedication of the Temple of David.
Mm-hmm. And I was, we were watching, I don't know if any of you have gotten into watching America's Got Talent, but we've gotten hooked on that show, and we were watching reruns of some that we had missed, and one of them that we had missed was a 30-year-old young woman who has cancer.
I saw that.
You saw that?
Yeah.
And was Simon Cowell's Golden Buzzer and all this stuff, and but you know, and he was, you could tell how moved he was by her, the joy she projected, because she sang a song that she had written herself that said, "I'm okay, it's all right," and she wrote this and sang this even though she has, as she said at the end of the show, she has been given a 2% chance of living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But the humility.
Mm-hmm.
Her,
Oh, yeah, and her joy was.
She
and she
tell.
said.
I mean.
Yeah, and she said.
Joy. It just.
Yeah,
came
it
out
just.
of her.
Yeah, and it affected, I think, the whole audience there.
Yeah.
And she said, the other thing she said was, just because life is hard doesn't mean we can't enjoy it or something.
Right.
That isn't an exact quote, but that's, yeah, just because life is hard doesn't mean we can't enjoy it.
Right.
And she really modeled that. It was fantastic.
It was an experience.
Did they say afterwards what had happened to her then?
No, they haven't said anything more about it and where she's at, and it's. The other question I had at the end of it was, in watching her, that she was there by herself, and that there was no one, no family there for her, no families, and that was the sad part of it.
But she made it.
Yeah, she made. She's on to the live shows and stuff, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, she said she have cancer still in her bones, and
I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I can't remember. She had she had cancer cells in several parts of her body, and so
it reminds me of something that doesn't necessarily go along. Well, it goes along a little bit with this, but there's a story about somebody who went to visit a terminally ill patient in a hospital. She was praying as the person arrived, and the guy says, "Well, what do you pray for? Do you pray for healing?" She said, "No. She says, I pray to get a sense of being with God."
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And
so she was feeling the joy.
and how we. Yeah, prayer isn't about focusing on ourselves, but helping us focus on others, and seeing how it's our connection with others that brings I think as your story talks about too, Greta, it's our connection with others that brings joy in the morning. Because that was my story. Was Heather came face up instead of face down, and so it was a difficult birth, and I spent a lot of time massaging Ronnie's back and relieving back pain, and this was back in 1974 when Lamaze was just getting started, and we were in a Catholic women's hospital that when labor rooms were still 2 beds to a room, and there were 24 labor rooms, and they had and Heather was born on full moon, and so there were every bed in all 24 labor rooms was full. Plus, there were 6 in the hallway.
Wow.
That's back when people were having lots of babies.
And so, there was a young couple. They were, quite young, and obviously had not been through Lamaze. And so every time she had a contraction, she would scream bloody murder, and he was in the room. That's one thing to say for it, but he would jump up and he would pace back and forth, and I would hear her going, "Never again." Never. As if he that's more of our human response.
Women have to go through the pain, but the men have to go through the worry, and and it's just scary, and it's just when you love somebody, you don't want to think about the pain, what they're going through, and it's.
So which is worse, the psychological or the physical?
Well, I'm sure the women would say physical, but it's.
It's funny, but then we do go through it again.
Yeah. Yes. So, 2 Corinthians.
I'll be glad to read that. 2 Corinthians. Now as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in utmost eagerness, and in our love for you, so we want you to excel also in this generous undertaking. I do not say this as a command, but I'm testing the genuineness of your love against the earnestness of others. For you know the generous act of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. And in this matter I am giving my advice. It is appropriate for you who began last year not only to do something, but even to desire to do something. Now finish doing it, so that your eagerness may be matched by completing it according to your means. For if the eagerness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. I do not mean that there should be relief for others and pressure on you, but it is a question of a fair balance between your present abundance and their need, so that their abundance may be for your need, in order that there may be a fair balance. As it is written, the one who had much did not have too much, and the one who had little did not have too little. I mean, you have to read this a few times in order to get it straight.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what that quote is from at the end.
Well, it sounds like Exodus when they put manna was sent down. If you gathered too much, it was rot. I'm guessing that's what that's from.
Yep. Exodus 16.
Yep. It would be.
Verse
Yeah.
18. Okay.
But I think he sounds like a perfect salesman. He starts off by complimenting them, and then starts by complimenting them and says, "No, this is what I want you to do." And then he says, "Well, if you're really a decent person, this is what you will do." And he doesn't really put his arm on.
I think you should have been a disciple of Paul. You would have been you could have kept him on the straight and narrow. I mean, because this is typical Paul. Is
that's exactly what he did in Philemon.
Right.
And
and the the thing I think, I have a son-in-law who works in financial planning. He's a certified financial planner, and he is working with persons who are retiring from Colgate in Iowa City, Colgate-Palmolive, and they've had a great career. They now have a great retirement. Many of them have bought rental properties, things like, and so their focus has always been on what they can accumulate, what they can accomplish, and they've never really given any thought to what they can give. Because he said when he talks to them about giving, because now they're at a point where he says some of them are reaching that point where you have to take your automatic disbursement from Social Security, and that pushes them into a whole other tax bracket. And so he is working with them in terms of their and what the common word for it is philanthropy. Just looking at how do you give out of your abundance to help those. What is it you have to give, instead of what more. Their thought is, what more can I accomplish? What more can I accumulate? Instead of looking at what is it that I can give that gives my life value, instead of what success I can have. What's going to give my life real value, that I can enjoy.
Yeah, and that brings up one thing. There's always an argument. Well, when I give a tenth, is that pre-tax dollars or after-tax dollars? Well, for once, our government makes it real easy if you got an IRA, because you can, and we have to take money. When you get to a certain age, you got to take the money out.
Right.
Well, but if you have it sent directly from the IRA to the church, there's no tax.
Right.
So
this is the stuff that Chris is working at, helping them understand that. And I'm surprised, that these are men who apparently have not had a real relationship with the church body or whatever, that they don't see that. But I think, as a culture, and it's part of the first half of life. I mean, the other Richard Rohr talks about that in his book, Falling Upward, is that in that first half of life, that's what we're about. Is what can we accomplish? What is it that's going to bring us success or notoriety or and it's in that second half of life then we begin to look at what really gives our life value. What is it that we can give that adds value, not only to our life, because but to the life of all of God's creation, and seeing what does it mean to add that, to add to the beauty of this world, to add to the function of it.
Yeah, I really like the idea of your present abundance and their need, so that your abundance meets their needs and their abundance meets your needs. It's the famous quote that I think young people hear a lot. Go where the world's great hunger meets, where your greatest passion meets the world's greatest hunger, or something like that. But yeah, like finding that balance of where you fit and where your gifts matter to the people around you, not just money gifts.
And it's interesting here. I think Paul is much more, is much gentler than Jesus when he's talking about this, because when Jesus talks about this in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, if you've been given a lot is going to be expected of you. Paul is there saying, oh, no, it's about a fair balance, but Jesus is saying, no, it's about doing with what you have, and doing well with it.
Well, I guess that had to do with fair balance, but one thing that came to my mind is reading this. What he wants to do with this money is send it to the Christians in Jerusalem, whom none of these people have ever met. And I'm sure there's lots of people in Corinth that were very, very needy, and he wasn't advocating giving to the needy in Corinth. What he wanted to support the Jerusalem Christians, who actually, in the end, didn't even appreciate Paul coming back with that money. They had a bunch of strife when he came back with that. But anyway, it's kind of interesting. That's where his priority was, rather than okay, what about the needy? I'm sure they were needy in their own city that they could donate to and help, which might even have won converts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point, and that and I think I don't know if Paul ever came to recognize Paul never. That's one thing about Paul, is as much as he was a missionary to the Gentiles, he never forgot his Jewishness. I mean, he was.
That's what the whole book of Romans is about.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah, in reading Paul or working with Paul, whether he saw himself as a Jew first and a Christian second, I don't know that. He definitely saw the relationship with Christ. As being more important than his relationship to the temple, and I think so that's, and for the good Jew, it's the relationship with his to the temple was of first importance, because that's where the sacrifices were made.
Well, this, this passage brings up, every day in the mail, we get somebody sending us something, well, we need your help, we need it. And especially if you've contributed to something in the past, then every week you get something
wonder how
from
much
them.
of what you've contributed is going to the mailers,
Right.
Yes. So that's,
Exactly.
and that's one of the things I try to do is, if I think something is worthy, then I go on the internet and I look up and I see, and it's amazing how many of these charities, you get 70 to 80% of it goes to overhead, because the people running the charities get a great salary, and they either got all their family involved and they get big salaries, and it sounds like something good, but and God tells us we need to research this, so don't give His money away in places it shouldn't go. But how do we discern? It's just like all the people standing on the corner asking for money, and if we give them money, is it going to go to support their drug habit or their alcohol habit, or so it's just something that I think about and pray about a lot. It's just
It is hard, I feel pretty
God's
comfortable
given
with that.
these gifts to us, and fortunately we probably all have an abundance compared to other people who don't have much.
Oh, we do. We do. Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable giving the ELCA the gifts and disaster Lutheran disaster response, because I know that that's
Right.
90% goes to the actual program, so I feel pretty good giving to that. And the things I don't know about, which I give to anyway, because I just feel I give to a lot of animal welfare groups, and I just hope they're spending the money wisely. I have no idea.
Yeah, at my previous job, I worked with a ton of different nonprofits, so every, Omaha Gives is all sort of like, we all traded $15 amongst each other on Omaha Gives Day. But, I'm not there anymore. I don't work directly with those groups, but I still support them, because I worked with them. I was on the ground and you see what they're doing.
Yeah, that would help if you'd actually seen them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Move on to Mark.
The gospel. Well, when Jesus crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue, named Jairus, came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. Then he entered. When he entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. At this, they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat.
One wonders how possibly no one would know about this, and say everybody was in there weeping and wailing, and then she's walking around. It could possibly be that nobody would know. Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe Jesus knew if he told them not to tell anybody, they'd tell the world.
That's all right. I'm sure that too.
Yeah. But also there's very practical advice of like, okay, just give her some food. You know, she's been sick, she's hungry.
And why did they make a point that she was 12?
Yeah.
I mean, that had to be there for a reason.
Yeah.
Well, just the fact that she could get up and walk around, I guess. You know. But if she was 2, she could get up and walk around.
Yeah. I feel like it's almost, I hear a lot of allegories for healthcare for women in this story, because there are people that hemorrhage for 12 years still today, and doctors don't know how to help them. So maybe it's, you know, she's sort of this woman that's like at the cusp, or this girl that's at the cusp of becoming a woman.
Oh, interesting. So it's connected to the previous story.
Yeah,
right.
I think, and it's sort of this, like, he stops to talk to the woman in the crowd, and by that time the girl is already dead. So, you know, some people could be mad that this woman hadn't asked and caused this commotion that delayed him, but, you know, that they don't need to compete for Jesus.
Yeah.
That is an interesting thought, the
Yeah.
symbolism there.
Yeah.
So new life to the older woman, new life to the young one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they were, and that's the case throughout the world. That world today is that, you know, girls at the age of 12 are often, if not married, or promised in marriage, and so that. So yes, she would have had a connection with.
Yeah, and that, like, also the value, this, you know, daughters weren't as important as sons, but yet this man fought for his daughter and believed that, you know, my little daughter was worth saving, even though she was sort of at this older level of being little. I think that's really cool.
I wonder if it has something to do with that the 12-year-old girl would also be in puberty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, the amazing part of the story, and I'd never thought about the allegory between the 2 women, but just the faith of the first woman to think, you know, he is so powerful, I believe so much in him, that he doesn't even have to do anything. If I can just touch his clothes, I know that, you know, that will be enough.
Well, she took a risk there doing that, because she would have been ritually unclean, and to touch this rabbi, and she could have been stoned.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you imagine being considered Like, you know, I hemorrhage once a month. It's not pleasant, but it happens. But for 12 whole years, and for the whole, like, being considered, like, how outcast she would have been for being sick in this way. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a big deal that she was in this crowd of people, and then she touched him.
Well, that she would even come into the crowd, because it had to be a crowd that was very unruly, that was not under any kind of control, because otherwise there would have been people there who would have known her and said, no, you can't come.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody would have prevented her from coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
she would not have been allowed in the synagogue. She would not have been allowed any place, because I don't know what the ritual is all about, you know. But after, a woman has their, menstrual cycle.
Yeah, they were.
There was a whole
Purified themselves.
whole ritual they had to go through to purify themselves, and nothing. She could never do that, and
But this
nothing.
crowd even would have been offended that she
Right.
would be among them
Right.
if they knew.
Yeah, if they would have known.
Why did he call her daughter? He said to her, daughter, your faith has made you. Why would he call her daughter? She's a woman. And then we've got the little daughter. They talk about up here, we talk about the little daughter. And then he calls this woman daughter. I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. I don't know why he would call her daughter.
Was that unusual for him to call a woman daughter if he was helping her? Was that did he call men son or anything? I mean, I just wondered if that
I
was
don't
an
know.
unusual thing. I haven't paid
I
attention.
don't
haven't
know.
paid attention to that at all.
It said, but the woman, knowing what had happened to her, and then he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well in peace. I don't know, it just struck me. That's kind of weird.
Also, there is a thing about in the verse 38. He saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly, and a note here in where I read, it says the mourners here may have been hired professionals.
What?
Yeah, that was often the case.
Wow.
At the home of the young girl.
Well, if they were hired professionals, then they must have been expecting her to die, because they didn't really have time to
Oh, yeah.
hire
why
these
would they-
professionals right at that moment. I wouldn't think if she just died within minutes of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does say it was customary for professional mourners to be brought in at the time of death.
Wow.
I've never heard of that. I
However-
mean, I've heard of it nowadays, but not.
No, it was common practice.
It was.
Yeah.
It said in this particular case,
Yeah,
it's
if-
not certain that
Especially
much
if,
time had
I mean,
elapsed.
it was a measure of your status if you could hire professional mourners. You know.
Yeah, it sounds like the dad would not have wanted the mourners there. So, like, who hired them? Because the dad's still trying to desperately save her life, even though she's either already dead and he's refusing to admit it, or she dies, like, while he's away getting Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have read the second page of the daily discipleship that we all get. But it talks about, the first one talks about a guy who's not feeling well, and he doesn't trust medicine, doctors. He's just, I have faith in Jesus. Jesus will heal me. And it reminds me of the story about the guy who his house was being flooded, and the police came and said, you gotta get out of here. Oh no, no problem. And so the water comes up to the, first floor, and the boat comes and said, come on, get out of here. You got, and then no, and so then he's standing on the roof, and helicopter comes and says, come on, we'll save you. And pretty soon he's swept away by the flood. He goes up to see Jesus, and he says, God, why? He says, look at, I sent you a director, I sent you a boat, I sent you a helicopter. What more did you want me to do? You know, sometimes we have to think about the great gifts that God has given us in medicine, and you know, the people surrounding us, and you know, Jesus doesn't do everything by himself. He's got all these helpers that he sends to help the loved ones, and you know, that's why the religious sect who doesn't, I guess, Scientology, or doesn't believe in medicine. It's just the healing power of God. Well, God sent provided the education for all of these doctors and the people that create the drugs, and to help us. So
yeah,
he provides in many ways to help us throughout our life.
Yeah, my grandpa has I was just at my parents' house, which used to be my grandparents' house, and the bedroom that was his office still has a plaque on the door that says, "Pray towards heaven, row towards shore." Like, also common sense.
Yeah.
And I think, again, with my own background, the other thing that goes on in this story that is about just this stigmatization that goes on in our world, and how people are seen as unworthy, and how we what we've done with that, and I think it's really Jesus doesn't comment on any of that, and I think that is part of. I can't find any comment about why he uses the word daughter. The only thought I have is that a daughter would denote, she is a member of the family. She has a right to be here, and how often we push people aside because we don't think they belong. And Jesus, by calling her daughter, is saying, yes, you belong here. That would be one thought. I don't know for sure, Marge, if that's... Well, I think, it's an important point, and what that means for us.
Yeah.
And how important that is when someone, addresses you as friend, or lets you know that you belong here, you're welcome here, and how important that is for people to know that. And any other comments? Any thoughts? I get to preach on this. This is always it's such a loaded text. There's so much you can, So.
What are you going to what are you going to draw out of this? Do you know yet what you're going to say?
I'm not sure. No, I'm not.
Invest in women's health care. Jesus said it was important. He healed the women. But no one else could heal.
I think, the fact that both these stories are essentially about, because that's the other thing about this 12-year-old girl is it's talked about as daughter, but if she was going through puberty in that culture, she would have been considered, that was a sign that she had become a woman. If she was of an age that she could bear a child, she was considered a woman. And so, and I don't know, maybe that, I'm not sure, Marge, if that's also the connection. Because he was on the way to see the daughter of a very important official.
Well, she was somebody's daughter, so I guess
Yeah.
that was.
Were there different translations in the Bible about with daughter, the Greek or the Hebrew, or
I'm not sure.
would it have been
And and whether Jesus most likely spoke in. Jesus would have most likely spoke in Aramaic because that was the language. That was the common.
mm-hmm.
That was the common language of that time of the common people.
In fact, I read that Mark makes more of a point of the Aramaic than any of the other Gospels. We come that as Aramaic. It's like it was written in Greek, but maybe by an Aramaic speaking person. Greek was the second language.
Right.
Yeah. There'll be lots of commentaries out on the internet this week since it's the text, so I'm sure someone will talk about it.
Yes. Yeah, we give you something to talk about anyway. So, well, should we close with the Lord's Prayer? Our Father,
who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done,
on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
So, I want